For 3 years, I went to bed next to the man I loved and pretended a storm wasn't raging inside my own body. I smiled through meetings. I laughed at dinners. Then I came home and measured every breath against pain like I was paying rent to it. If you've ever felt invisible next to your own suffering, you know exactly what I mean. Here's the hook you came for. I asked my best friend to be with my husband, not because I stopped loving him, but because I thought love meant giving him what I couldn't, and what he did next changed everything. Back then it was Seattle skies and a penthouse with big windows and bigger silence. My husband, Cole Rourke, was the guy who turned a garage idea into a cloud empire and still held doors. Like a gentleman, I ran a scrappy branding studio that punched above its weight. People called us power couple, like it was a compliment, but endometriosis doesn't care what your LinkedIn says. It turned intimacy into a minefield. Every touch into a negotiation. Nights into careful choreography that always ended with an apology. In my throat. I heard the whispers at galas and in bathrooms. One woman leaned in at a fundraiser, like she was doing me a favor, and said, "Some girls just aren't built for marriage." I nodded, like I agreed, yeah. That happened. The cruelest voice, though, lived in my head. It kept a ledger of nights avoided and excuses spent and told me I was becoming less every day. I tried everything I knew how to try: doctors with nice views and colder eyes protocols that promised relief if I became small enough, quiet enough, compliant enough. Every time something didn't work, I revised my expectations lower, like grief is a spreadsheet. Cole never blamed me. He kept saying I was enough. He kept tucking a blanket around the space between us like he could warm it into disappearing. I still saw it in his face when a love scene came on screen, or a couple laughed too loudly at the next table. Not hunger exactly, just loss, and that more than the pain undid me so. I did the thing I am not proud of, but I will not lie about. I called my best friend. We met at a rooftop bar that pretends to be summer even when the wind says otherwise. String lights gin that tastes like honesty, Tessa Grant in her red lipstick, that always arrives before she does. She took one look and said, "You look like the last 10 minutes of a runway show, glitter everywhere and no oxygen." I didn't laugh. I said it straight, because rip the tape is the only way. Sometimes I can't be with my husband. Not really. I'm losing him to resignation. I need you to help us. She blinked once, then twice. You want me to sleep with Cole? I told her I'd researched arrangements and contracts and rules that keep things clean and discreet. I told her it could be a plan. She didn't give me outrage. She gave me precision. "Jordan, that's not strength. That's surrender wearing a blazer. You didn't build your life by settling for half." "When did you start?" I wanted to argue, but she was right. I had turned my marriage into a case study because data felt safer than faith. I went home, and I pitched my husband like a boardroom. My voice steady, my hands not. I used words like practical and solution, and I said Tessa's name and waited for the explosion. Instead, he went very quiet. Then he came to the window with me and let the city paint halos around us. "Do you really think that's what I married?" he asked. "A body." Solving a need, it's part of marriage, I heard myself say, and I hated the smallness of it. He put his hands on my shoulders like I was a bird. He didn't want to startle. "I married your mind. That takes problems no one wants and drags them into daylight. I married your laugh that derails my worst days. I married the way you count raindrops to guess when the sun will break in sickness and in health." Wasn't a quote, it was a contract. His hands shook mine too. "How long until you resent me?" I whispered. "Until you remember you could have had more." He smiled without joy. "I've been choosing you every morning for 3 years. I'll choose you again tomorrow. If we fight together. I don't want an arrangement. I want a war." The twist is this: at 4:30, The next morning, he wasn't beside me. His study had become mission control, journal logins, sticky notes marching like an army, a whiteboard labeled Operation North Star, a list of specialists across continents cross-referenced by outcomes and approach: Copenhagen, Vancouver, Nashville. Austin names I'd never heard, because I had stopped believing the map had any roads left for me. He moved meetings, deputized his COO, learned enough neuro and pelvic anatomy to be dangerous. In the right way, he poured money not into status, but into coordination, which is the part the system always forgets. He brought me coffee and asked if I would let him show me possible. I wanted to say yes, but hope is heavy when you've carried disappointment too long, till we started Dr. Karen Meyer in Copenhagen. Didn't pat my file, she said. What you've been told is not the full picture. We pulled in a trauma-informed PT in Vancouver, a pain neurologist in Nashville testing targeted blocks, a nutrition scientist in Austin who wrote an anti-inflammatory plan that didn't taste like punishment. Coal-synced time zones, couriered equipment, funded a custom compound, when off the shelf wasn't precise enough. He never let me feel like a project. He made sure I felt like the point. Even when the world tried to reduce me, a surgeon who loved his view more than his outcomes smirked at our protocol. You reading blogs now? He asked. Cole slid a folder across the desk. We're reading data. If you want citations, they're tabbed. The doctor inhaled like the room had moved on without him, because it had. Month 1 felt like boot camp built by angels and engineers. PT left me shaking. The first nerve block turned my stomach. I missed donuts like an old friend, but my team took my pain personally. We adjusted. We tracked tells, we found small wins. Then 6 months in, the weather changed. I woke up and the knife was gone. I lay so still, you'd think the bed might spook it. Cole, I whispered. He sat up like the word was an alarm. I think I'm okay right now. I don't hurt. We didn't celebrate loudly, not yet. We made coffee and watched the day try to fold it. Didn't I showered without bracing, put on jeans I had buried on a shelf called Dr. Meyer. She smiled like pilots do when turbulence disappears. Tipping point, she said, day the course. Anchor the change that night. I sat in Cole's study and said, you've been running a campaign, a quiet one with a code name, Don't Lie. He opened an encrypted tablet, and there it was, North Star intake. North Star Weekly, North Star, contingencies, 12 specialists, 8 time zones, research dollars sent. Where the gaps live, safety nets for the safety nets. Why didn't you tell me it was this much? I asked. Because you would have tried to carry it, he said. And I needed you to heal, you know what I mean? We turned off our phones and drove to a cedar cabin on the peninsula. I bookmarked the day I was diagnosed, then closed because it hurt to want it. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a fireplace that made promises, a playlist from our first summer. No agendas, he said. And I believed him. We cooked. We told easy stories. The mountain light crawled across the floor like it had missed us. When he touched my waist, my body didn't negotiate. It said yes. We moved careful. Then, sure, then human afterward. I waited for the catch, and it didn't come. I cried into his shoulder anyway, because sometimes you have to make room for joy. How do you feel? He asked. Like myself, I said. Like the person I kept insisting I still was. The days after weren't perfectly clean. Old pain flickered like a light in a house we no longer lived in. But belief had moved in, and with it, a new question. What do we do with all this? At a backyard cookout, a woman asked. Where I got my necklace, then said her sister had the thing, where intimacy hurts and her husband disappears into work. Glee, she whispered. I wrote my number on a napkin. Use me, I said. Strangers are safe sometimes. That night I told Cole I wanted to share, not as a brand, as a door. He nodded like he'd already cleared the hallway. We can fund travel, he said. We can underwrite coordination, the boring part that saves lives. The next morning, he made calls and the world bent a little. Here's my take that might start a fight in the comments. I don't think I was evil for asking Tessa. I think I was human. Desperation dresses up like practicality when shame is holding the mirror. But I also think Tessa saved me from a smaller life by telling me to keep betting on myself. The villains in my story are not the people. They're the system that treats women's pain like background noise, the doctor who called my ceiling low, the voice in my head that said, "Burden," the woman at the gala, who asked if the fairy tale cracked. They got their scenes, they got their answers. Victory didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like dropping eggs on a Sunday and not flinching when Cole's hand found my waist. As we both bent to clean the mess, it felt like lemon on my fingers, and a life we fought for breathing in my lungs. We told our story at a community room in Tacoma, folding chairs, bad coffee, honest faces. A man in the back asked if it's fair to ask a spouse for years of patience when bodies fail. The room held its breath. Fair isn't the measurement we used. I said worth was, Cole added. We negotiated terms with reality and with each other, not with imaginary perfect people, after a woman whispered. My mother says real men leave when this happens. I squeezed her hand, then. Let's raise different sons, you know what I mean? So here's where I leave you. If you're stuck between pain and pride and you're halfway to surrendering your life to keep your love, hear me. You are not broken. Inventory, you get to want everything. And if you've been the one holding the line at 3 a.m., with spreadsheets and prayer, I see you too. We didn't win because we found magic. We won because we refused to call compromise a conclusion. Now tell me this: was I wrong to ask my best friend for help, even if I didn't go through with it? Was Cole right to run a whole campaign in secret so I could focus on healing? Do we judge women's pain differently? And if you've seen it, where? Drop your take your story, your pushback type. Keep fighting. If any of this hit home, and tell me where you're watching from, someone near you needs to read what you write next.